Welcome back to the Anarchist Mechanic, where we're building power our way. Last episode we ripped the heart from the beast, so to speak. So from this point onwards, we're going to play Dr. Frankenstein on this engine. That starts with tearing it to pieces, so let's stop pissing about and get down to business. Ooh, that was good. Before we swing a spanner or turn a bolt, we need to remember about safety. Now, safety is highly important. So the first step before we start anything on this job is to remember your safety boots,
Fucking safe as houses,
and gloves. Come on. Fucking. One second. Just 1 second. Alright, now that safety's out of the way, we can get into it. In the last episode, we removed several items that I didn't show on the camera. This being the rockers and the push rods. It's not very difficult. All you need to do is remove the valve covers and then undo the rocker hold down bolts. Now, quick note, if you are going to reuse this hardware, it is important when removing them to set them out in order of cylinder and valve, because the intake and exhaust rockers on the LS3 are not interchangeable. As you can see, the intake rockers are offset and the exhaust rockers are not. Even the push rods have been mated to the lifters and the rockers, so it's important to keep them in the correct order. Now, in our case, we're going to be replacing our push rods, lifters, even our valves, so I really couldn't give two fucks about the order. With the engine on the stand, the first thing to do is remove the harmonic balancer. Now, there is a specific tool to remove LS balancers. However, we just used a 3-jaw puller that we had stashed around the shed. It's important to remember when using a balancer pulley that you leave the crank bolt in place so you can react off it. The last thing you want to do is damage that crank. It may be helpful to have a monkey on hand to catch the balancer, as it does have a bit of weight to it.
It was about now Ryan thought the engine needed a good blowjob.
Down! Blow down. From there, I started removing the front timing cover. Remember that 2 bolts hold the oil pan to the cover from underneath. Now, as you can see, once we remove this gives us access to our oil pump and camshaft timing gears. While I was doing this, Rhino was removing the heads from the block and I followed in suit. When removing these heads, there's no pattern that I can see that needs to be followed. However, it is good practice to remove the heads in the reverse order of installation, as some cylinder heads on different engines can warp or crack. For reference, I'll show a picture of the bolt torque sequence from the manual, or alternatively, you can Google the LS cylinder head torque sequence in Google Images. Once the cylinder heads are off, we can inspect the tops of our pistons. Now, as you can see, these factory pistons have a dot which indicates the front of the motor and the orientation of the piston and rod combination. Following that, we removed and inspected our lifters. Now, it always pays to inspect these lifters so that you know what condition they're in, especially if you're planning on reusing them. Not that I would advise that. However, if you're doing this on a budget, the lifters should be inspected to determine if they should be reused or if they can be reused. This can also show us what kind of condition the cam is in before we even look at it. In our case, we only found some minor marks where the lifters had picked up some minor debris. However, These are also being replaced, so I wasn't really too concerned about them. Then Rhino thought it was a good time for some potassium.
Stop titting about.
Sorry. Sorry, my bad. Once the lifters were up and out of the bores, we removed the cam gear bolt. Ordinarily, you would remove the spring tension from the tensioner by prying it away from the chain and fitting the correct hold down tool into the hole. However, we didn't do that. For this, you're going to need someone to hold the crankshaft still by refitting the factory crank bolt. Now, we added a castle nut over the top of that bolt to take up the space where the balancer would be and to protect the crank from any damage. The crank bolt and the cam bolt should be the same size, so you're going to need two of for whatever size it is.
What was the size of the socket?
Honestly, one, I cannot remember the fucking size. Two, if you don't have two of everything, then you're probably not ready for this type of job yet. And three, do what all the best mechanics do and just try every fucking socket in the box until you find the right one. Trust me, it will be the last one you put on the bolt. If you're only going to be replacing the camshaft and you aren't going to be stripping the engine like we are, this is a good time to set your timing marks to ensure when you fit the cam back up, it's correctly timed. The correct timing, the crankshaft mark will be at 12 o'clock and the camshaft mark will be 6 o'clock, lining these dot to dot. Once the bolt's been removed, you can remove the cam gear. This gives us access to our camshaft retainer. These bolts look like they're a torque screw, however, they're an odd size. Sometimes you can be really unlucky and strip some of those bolts. If that does happen, do not just weld the plate back on because you will burn the O-ring seal on the back side of that plate and it won't hold oil pressure. This means that any broken bolts, you've got to dig out the drill bits and easy outs. Now, if you're doing this job in the vehicle, this is where you would spin the camshaft around a couple of times to seat those lifters up into those lifter buckets. Then you can slide some rods down the inside of these oil passages to hold the lifters up while you remove the cam. Now, finally we're at the fun maker. The staff of satisfaction, the convivial cane as it were, the baton of bumps!
Come on, he's talking about the camshaft.
Why do you always have to ruin my fun? I had like 3 or 4 more things that I could have done. Yes, we're talking about the camshaft. It's important to note that you do need to be delicate when removing it, as you don't want to mark any of the cam bearings with these lobes. Now in our case, we're going to be replacing the bearings anyway. Why? Well, as you may or may not be able to see right here on the second journal, we have a split journal. Now that actually causes uneven wear from the factory camshaft on our cam bearings. Now I should be showing some photos of some of the camshaft bearings that came out of Rhino's engine to illustrate this. But when you install your new camshaft with those old factory bearings, it causes a high spot where the camshaft has been running from this split journal. That means the camshaft, your new camshaft as it were, will be riding on that high spot, which will allow oil to pass the cam, lowering the oil pressure and causing a lack of lubrication on that cam journal. Now the top end is disassembled, we can flip the engine over and work on getting those pistons out. Remember, this block still has fluid in it, so have a drain tray ready. upside down, we can get to work removing that sump. Now the sump's off, we can remove the engine oil pickup. It was at this point, Rhino imparts some wisdom upon us.
You've got like a little tool that's got 2 lips.
That's good, but that's the causes so many LS people grief. That is the fucking lifeline of your car. If that's still fucked up,
Well, because it just can't pick up anything. It sucks air.
yeah, it'll cavitate. It won't build up pressure.
Won't have nuts, dog. Cross fingers.
Don't fuck up the red O-ring. This is important.
Thanks, Rhino. Now the windage tray comes off, and this reveals the pistons. Before we go ripping into this, it's important to mark the rods and caps so you know where they go when we reassemble the engine if you're reusing them.
Because we don't know where the split goes, if you start here, you know it's not going to split here and it's going to split here, so we're not putting the marks on the same part.
Yep.
So if you work this way down, because obviously by the time you get to number 8, you're going to have 8 little dots.
Yep.
So that way there's no chance. And I'll do this one here as number 1.
To remove the pistons, give them a push with something soft like the backside of a wooden hammer handle. The only things left are the oil pump and the crank gear. For this, just remove the 4 mounting bolts holding the pump to the block. Oh God. And we're done. Shut it down. Take a drink. Thank God. Oh. Oh God. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as always, if you like what we're doing here and you want to show some support, click that like button and subscribe. If you think we've done something wrong or you want to know some more information, leave a comment. If you want more, check out the previous videos on the playlist. But until then, to the Ratmobile.